Hi, I'm Dan Music. In this video, we'll be showing you how to install the safety winder on a more typical residential door. You'll either be doing this after you've installed the door, while you're installing the door, or the tracks and other parts may already be up. But in a new installation, what we normally do is assemble the horizontal track, the vertical track, the flag bracket, and the end bearing plate on each side. We put the rollers in the tracks, pitch the tracks 45 degrees, pop this into place, screw it all in. In this video, we are assuming a starting point of tracks that are already installed and the end bearing plates already installed. From the dimensions on the end bearing plate in relation to the top of the door, we'll get that dimension, go to the center of the door, and make a mark for the center support bracket. After securing the springs to the spring anchor bracket above the center of the door, it's now time to install the cable drums and the cable. On this side, we push the cable drum against the end bearing and then tighten the set screws. You go a quarter to a half a turn on each set screw. That's after the set screw first hits the shaft. So now we see that the cable drum is against the end bearing. Next, we install the cable in the end of the drum. Now on this side, we can turn the shaft, but on the other side, we won't be able to because we're going to put a vice grip up here. So we check the cable, make sure nothing down below is tangled up. The cable should come around about halfway. And at this point, with the cable tight on the drum against the bearing, I'm going to hold the cable drum so the cable is tight. The drum is against the end bearing. Shafts with a solid keyway, solid shafts with a 1/4-inch keyway in it, you need to leave it a little bit loose. When you go to the other side, the keys will line up, get your key in, and you just leave the cables just a little bit loose. Over here on the left side, the shaft can't turn, so we can't turn the shaft like we do on the other side. Vice grip's holding it. So we turn the drum instead. And install the cable in the drum, turn the drum to tighten the cable. Also, sometimes the shaft will move back and forth when you're making changes. So you want to pull on the shaft to make sure the drum is tight against the bearing down there. And then you push the drum over here, finger tighten it. I'm holding the tension on here. That's a quarter, that's a half. It's a quarter, a half. So check the shaft, it doesn't move back and forth. The cables are tight on both sides. So at this point, we will stretch the springs. In order to stretch the springs, we have to figure out how many coils that we need. So on a 16 by 7, usually you have about 7.5, 8 turns. So we'll measure 8 coils and then add maybe a 1/4 inch. Better to have the spring stretched a little bit too much than not enough. You could end up with a serious problem with binding. So we come up here. Here are 8 coils and then another coil about 1/4 inch, so roughly 2 inches. So we're going to measure and mark 2 inches. Two-inch mark. There are several ways to stretch a spring. One is to just pull it You can do this with a smaller wire. You pull it to the mark and then tighten the set screws. Another way is to get a vice grip out here. This is a design that we created for stretching the springs. It's a very simple system. You can also just get some little short pieces of rod and use the cable yourself and make something similar to this. So we put this out here. So then you tighten the set screws. Oops. Another tool that we've developed is the spring stretcher. On this door, we'll need to set our bracket at 8 inches. Oops. Inches. We're gonna put a bracket up here. Vice grip it to the shaft. Put this in the spring. We have this in here, and then we just pull it till it comes out here. I think there's some places that need to be filed. It's a real simple tool. So we bring that out, and then tighten the set screw. So this spring is stretched, and now we'll go over and stretch the other spring. So on this side, we'll make 2 marks, one for the stretch, 2 inches, and then one for stretching and placing the bracket at 8 inches. So here's an 8-inch mark. Strip the bracket. Come down here a little bit. Put the image here. This needs to be at about 45 degrees, and then you pull the spring. Tighten the set screws. Okay, so now we have stretched both the springs after we set the cables and the cable drums. Now we're going to go down and install the winder. So you want to make sure that your shaft extends at least 1 3/4 inches from the end of the bearing. So we're at about 4 3/8. So you need that 1 3/4 inches, which is right here. The shaft needs to be at least that long. That way the coupler of the winder can go over this far. Then it's got the screws on the ends, which gives you plenty of room for the set screws without bending the end of the shaft like this one. Yes. Notice that the winder has 2 brackets, a short bracket on the top and a longer bracket on the bottom. Also, you can either put it on this way or that way, but you have more options if you turn this, you turn the winder so that the bottom bracket is away from the torsion assembly, away from the bearing. You have more options if you install the winder this way. This will go over the bottom of the bracket, whereas if this is turned the other way, this will be restrained by the bracket, and you won't be able to get as close here. Now, if you have a shorter shaft, sometimes that may make the difference in whether or not it works. So what we want to do is bring this in here about 1/4 inch from the bearing. You don't want it touching the bearing, the end bearing right here. So you got about 1/4 inch there. Okay, so before we tighten the set screws, we need to check to make sure that this is safe. Now, if you look down here, you see that we've got about maybe 1/2 inch between the bottom bracket and the jamb. And that's a little bit too close. You want at least 1 inch. So what we're going to do is install a bracket under here to keep this from possibly slipping and spinning and injuring someone. So to keep this from possibly sliding over because of the narrow distance, I'm adding some angle here. Let's keep this from sliding off in case something gets messed up. It's always good to add extra cable support down here at the bottom. This is going to have a little cable, extra cable support on the bottom. So you want both the bottom secure and also the top. You see here how there's not nothing here behind this in case a spring breaks. Sometimes it'll ricochet and be dangerous. So at this point, we'll tighten the set screws. Notice we have set screws on both sides of the winder. If you have a real heavy door, like a big twin 2x16, you probably want to tighten the set screws on both sides. But on a light door like this, and since the shaft is sticking out far enough, we'll just tighten the set screws on the outside. This is a 1/2 inch set screw, so you need a 1/2 inch socket. There we go. Okay. If you have a shorter shaft, you'll need to tighten the set screws on the inside. So you can get to 2 of them. Just go a 1/2 turn after you hit the shaft. So we're at the shaft now, so we go 2/4 turns. Now I can't get to that 3rd set screw. But the next step in the process is to remove the vice grip and then turn the drum 1/4 turn to remove the cables. We have to remove the cables in order to wind the springs. We want to mark the drums at the 3 o'clock position or 9 o'clock, depending on which way you're looking at it. And we're going to be taking this off, moving the drum around, but when we get our 7.5 or 8 turns on here, this needs to be right here. When we're finished, we're going to stop it at here, put a cable on, and bring it back down, and then see how it operates. Now make a mark. Remove the vice grip. Set the drill in the counterclockwise position. And turn the winder and turn this 1/4 turn. We're not winding the springs at this point. We're turning the cable drums, the shaft and the cable drums, so we can remove the cables. I usually tie off the cable on the door so it doesn't go down to the ground. So this cable is off. Now I need to go to the other side and remove that cable. We back it off, quarter turn. Now we see if we can tighten that set screw. Quarter turn. Let me adjust that a little bit. Now it's time to wind the springs. We use a 7/16 socket. So we set the drill counterclockwise. Notice this is a mark. We're going to turn it 7 times and then put the cables on, see how the door works. If we need to adjust the spring tension afterward, the easy way to do that is to remove the cables and then wind the spring until you, if you need to add a quarter turn here, add another quarter turn, bring the drum around, and then turn it, loosen the set screws and turn it back. But we'll show you how to do that. So at this point, we're going to wind the spring 7 times. You also want to keep your head out of the path of the winder. Keep your hand off the shaft. Notice the springs as we turn it. The springs start going in the up direction like they are when you're winding with a winding bar. So here's the first cycle. Let's see, we'll turn there. We're at 7. Now this is where you would normally put your cable in, but right now we need to go back a quarter turn to, or add another quarter turn to it to get a cable on. Then we'll bring it back and then we'll test it. I'm going to install the cable over here on the left side. Around the cable drum. Keep your fingers on the outside of the cable. You want to make sure the cable is all the way in. You want to make sure the tip is all the way inside the edge of the cable drum. And sometimes the cables will come loose after you install one. to put a vice grip on here. That'll keep the cable on the drum. The drill is set in clockwise direction. I'm going to turn this about a quarter of a turn to tighten the cables. Now the other one has a vice grip hanging on it. This one doesn't. So I've got to hold it to make sure that it stays on. Okay. When you're finished winding, the winder should be free. Right now it's being held by the cable, and also this is also restraining the door. But you want to make sure before you remove the winder that everything is free. If this thing is still real tight, the springs could be way too strong. Or if it's loose, and a lot of this can be very dangerous. So at this point, since this is loose, and since the door looks like it will stay on the floor, let me remove this. There are a number of ways you can secure this with cable down here. We have a little carabiner clip, and open that and bring it around. You can use chokers, you can vice grip chokers to it, you can use chain, a number of things. So this is loose now, so we can loosen the set screws. On rider doors, we just do the set screws on the outside if you have enough shaft. Okay. Because of the extra angle, we can't remove the winder. So, removing the screws. Just check the door one more time to make sure it stays down. And then I remove the winder. I think that one set screw is a little tight. Okay. Remove the winder. We have two vice grips here to remove. One that kept the cable on the drum, and the second to keep the door from coming up and injuring you if the springs are too strong. Come back over here and remove this vice grip. And then I test the door. Looks like it needs just a little bit more attention. You want a door to stay up halfway by itself, which it does. You want to stay on the floor. So the door stays on the floor. Stays halfway. But when you get all the way up, it's a little lazy. So we need to add a little bit of tension to it. Let me show you a quick way to do that. So now I'm going to reinstall the winder. Bring it in here. About a 1/4 inch over here. Tighten the set screws. And then add the angle at the bottom. Reinstall the angle. So we need to add a 1/4 turn of tension to the springs. The door is just a little bit heavy when it's open. So in order to do this, we reinstall the winder. And what I'm going to do is turn the drum up 90 degrees. And that will give us an extra 1/4 turn. But only after we reinstall the cables and bring this back. So, going counterclockwise. Oops. So we go counterclockwise. So now the black mark is on top. So I loosen the set screws. You do one side at a time. Bring this back around. Make sure the drum is tight against the bearing, and then tighten the set screws. Now I need to go to the other side and tighten and adjust the drum over there too. Over here, I loosen the set screws. Turn the drum, quarter turn. Make sure the shaft is tight. So now both cable drums have been reset, and that added a quarter tension. When we respring everything at the other end, transfer the torque, it will have added a quarter turn of tension. So for safety, we vice grip the tracks on both sides about 3 inches above the roller. We're only adding a quarter of a turn, so we're not expecting any surprises. So now I'm resetting the tension so I can remove the winder and test the door. It drills in clockwise. Notice the cable drum coming down. Also notice that this is going to come up. So now the winder is free to remove. We added a quarter turn of tension. The door stays down. So I'll remove the angle here at the bottom. Then I will loosen the set screws on the winder. Helps you be able to see it.
It does.
Okay. So this slid off. Notice that the door still stays down. And we'll come down and test the door again. Just to check it again. And make sure the door stays down. Remove the vice grip. We have one on each side. Remove that one too. Then we open the door again. It stays on the floor. Stays halfway. stays open. If I were replacing the springs on this thing again, I think I'd make them about an inch longer. It would give it a little bit more of a hug at the top, but door balances perfectly.